You've mentioned Johnny Thompson a little bit here, and I know this was something that Penguin did in conjunction with Magicana, and I know that you were very instrumental in putting together the Johnny Thompson books.
Magicana was the publisher of The Magic of Johnny Thompson, the 2-volume set that we released last year in 2018.
And you were heavily involved in helping to get that material translated from Johnny's living repertoire into what we see in print.
There's a pretty big process.
It wasn't just you; it was a team. There was a big team
exactly.
involved because there's a huge. I mean, these are giant books, but
yes.
What is it like to take someone else's material and put it into print? Because I know putting my own material into print is a chaotic and wild experience. So dealing with someone else's and translating it in a way that is meaningful not just to them but also to the public must be a challenging task.
Absolutely. And the big heavy lift was done by Jamie Ian Swiss, who started the entire process by working with Johnny and just getting it written down. That started, believe it or not, 10 years before we even got involved with the publishing side. So for a decade, Jamie was recording Johnny's performances. So how do you do that? You talk about it, you write down the basic effect, but then you have to dive in and get the embellishments of how does that nuance work? Now, Johnny is a very wide-ranging performer. What he often called himself a general practitioner, because he would do stage shows, close-up shows, mentalism, trade shows. Then, of course, the specialty acts of the comedy magic, and then the great Thompsonian, et cetera, and illusions. He's now a consultant. So his vast array of knowledge and information was constantly evolving as well. So Jamie had the heavy task of just nailing Johnny to a chair and just pounding it out, which that you can understand why it took a great deal of time. And then taking that and translating that now into someone who may not have had a chance to see Johnny perform this. I take it for granted that because I had seen him perform many times over many years. But someone who has just purchased this book, how are they going to be able to do that? So we had to illustrate it in a way that gave it clarity with making some assumptions that you're not an absolute beginner, but making no assumptions that you wouldn't understand a special way of how Johnny may have held something or handled a technique. So again, we went through everything with Johnny. Johnny also edited and read every single word to go through to make sure we were correct, and he was happy with the adjustment of making this whole project come together. And I had the difficult and happy task of also photographing and recording our sessions together, so we had a record of that as well. And I shot well over, I think I counted once, 7,000 photos over 4 visits.
As a photographer myself, I can only imagine how long it took you to go through all of those.
The photo editing was this is a giant team effort, So we've had Magicana come in after the big process of writing was down. My colleague David Ben came on board to help really sort out the book with Johnny and to work in with Jamie. How are we going to frame this? How is the content? How do you split it into 2 volumes? I mean, we had to make all these decisions. Then we had to record it with the photos. So I worked on that. We had then an editor come in, Carl Johnson, to help us edit again, word for word. Does it make sense to a reader? Have you followed all of this? Because you can see it's very easy to lose sight over the 2 volumes.
I think there's a lot of people creating today who intuitively understand their own material, and when they give it to somebody else, there's a lot of different questions that come out that you, as the originator of the effect, you don't think twice about it, and so having to put that in someone else's material is a very, very different task.
And that was where I think something like the nuance of the mentalism that this chapter that Johnny has in, or the trade show section, because you learn more than just the tricks. You're learning structure. You're learning a reason why. You're learning how to sell. You're learning how to work with a client. You're learning how to work a product into the language. That was also a really nice part of the book where we talk about the Dove Act and the Comedy Act and the importance of the role that both Johnny and Pam played in making the act together. How did they bring it? And they were classically trained actors.
Yes.
So they had that powerful presence in their own characters, to have that subtext between the 2 characters on stage. But then there's a complicated magic sequence going on too. don't. It's harder actually in many ways, I think, to do the comedy magic.
I think people don't understand very often that with comedy is, while it is in general linear, it doesn't have to be. Whereas with magic, you have to do A to B to get to B to get to C, and to do that while also being entertaining is a tremendously difficult thing. And some of the stuff Johnny was doing was not easy, and to be able to do that while making people laugh is a tremendous task in and of itself.
Exactly, and that, you made me think about a sequence in the book that it's a really great area for learning. Jamie took the time to write an essay that describes the act, but in doing so, you as the reader can understand the subtext of what's going on when you watch these two individuals perform this beautiful act, and then you start to realize how he's structuring this in a build. We're seeing a build. He describes why he doesn't start with a double dove production right off the top. He tells you why that you want to think about that if you're going to do that. Jamie works on the sequencing of how Johnny has mapped the building of each Dove production, how the method, the steals, the reasoning why his body would come to the right or to the left. When Pam stumbles on, it's everything is to a second with precision. And it looks so lofty and loose and in the moment, and that's all practice. So how do you do that? And that we really I'm very pleased with that part, because it's also a legacy for us to learn from. Not that we're going to run around and do a comedy act with Dove Productions anymore.
No, but you can learn, even if you never do any of the material in it, you can learn a lot about how to construct your own material by studying the way Johnny did things.
And that's why I think there's some huge value in the books. There's some wonderful magic. I worked intimately with Johnny on this. I'm in a happy position to be working with him in the photo sessions where he starts to describe how he's getting into he says that he would always say it's a funny thing, and then he would tell you a great story. And I would have this when we set him up with these sessions of photographing. I went to Vegas, from Toronto to Vegas, to photograph him, and I'd have him hold. I'm very happy with the way the pictures turned out, but as you know, as a photographer, you have to have lots of light. You have to work out for the shadows. You have to think about this. You have to think about that. We're communicating the information. How are we going to expose that? So I am crawling all over this man. I am crawling. Yeah. Can you move your belly over? I need to get my arm in there. I'm crawling up underneath to get a shot of these wonderful breaks and complicated buckles that he was doing. I mean, it's just fantastic. And he's frozen doing this while I'm holding a light, while I'm trying to shoot, and he's telling me a story. I mean, it's Twister with a whole new twist.
It's a wonder the book ever got done.
It's true. It's true. He had so many great stories to tell us. I was working with another team. We've had so many angels work on this book with us. We were very, very fortunate. And working with the production team in Las Vegas was fantastic, because we got a chance to hear Johnny just let us, fill us with these wonderful stories, inspire us. And, when I come back to read and to work through the stuff, I can see it with a different meaning. We want to create that reverence that he brought to the stories when we were hearing, and communicate it to our readers. So I think that we made a large effort to do that, to make sure Johnny knew exactly what was going on with clarity, precision, and I'm very proud of the final outcome.